A nome was a subnational administrative division of ancient Egypt. Today's use of the Greek nuomikron muator, Nome, rather than the Egyptian term sepat came about during the Ptolemaic period, when use of Greek was widespread in Egypt. The availability of Greek records on Egypt influenced the adoption of Greek terms by later historians. Ancient Egypt. The division of ancient Egypt into nomes can be traced back to the pre-dynastic period. These nomes originally existed as autonomous city-states, but later began to unify. According to ancient tradition, the ruler Menes completed the final unification. Not only did the division into nomes remain in place for more than 3 millennia, the areas of the individual nomes and their ordering remained remarkably stable. Some, like Xois in the Delta or Kont in Upper Egypt, were first mentioned on the Palermo stone, which was inscribed in the 5th dynasty. The names of a few, like the nome of Bubastis, appeared no earlier than the New Kingdom. Under the system that prevailed for most of pharaonic Egypt's history, the country was divided into 42 nomes. Lower Egypt, from the Old Kingdom capital Memphis to the Mediterranean Sea, comprised 20 nomes. The first was based around Memphis, Saqqara, and Giza, in the area occupied by modern-day Cairo. The nomes were numbered in a more or less orderly fashion south to north through the Nile Delta, first covering the territory on the west before continuing with the higher numbers to the east. Thus, Alexandria was in the 3rd nome, Bubastis was in the 18th. Upper Egypt was divided into 22 nomes. The first of these was centered around Elephantine, close to Egypt's border with Nubia at the First Cataract, the area of modern-day Aswan. From there the numbering progressed downriver in an orderly fashion along the narrow fertile strip of land that was the Nile Valley. Waset was in the 4th nome, Amarna in the 14th, and Medum in the 21st. Ptolemaic and Roman Egypt. Some nomes were added or renamed during the Greco-Roman occupation of Egypt. For example, the Ptolemies renamed the Crocodilopolitan nome to Arsino. Hadrian created a new nome, Antinopolites, for which Antinopolis was the capital. The nomarch. At the head of each nome stood a nomarch. The position of the nomarch was at times hereditary, while at others they were appointed by the pharaoh. Generally, when the national government was stronger, nomarchs were the king's appointed governors. When the central government was weaker, however, such as during foreign invasions or civil wars, individual nomes would assert themselves and establish hereditary lines of succession. Conflicts among these different hereditary nomarchies were common during, for example, the First Intermediate Period, a time that saw a breakdown in central authority lasting from the 7th through the 11th dynasties, until one of the local rulers was once again able to assert control over the entire country as pharaoh. Survival of the nomes. The nomes survived through the Ptolemaic period, into Roman times. Under Roman rule, individual nomes minted their own coinage, the so-called nome coins, which still reflect individual local associations and traditions. The nomes of Egypt retained their primary importance as administrative units until the fundamental rearrangement of the bureaucracy during the reigns of Diocletian and Constantine. From AD 307/8, the place was taken by smaller units called pagi. Eventually powerful local officials arose who were called pagarchs, through whom all patronage flowed. The pagarch's essential role was as an organizer of tax collection. Later the pagarch assumed some military functions as well. The pagarchs were often wealthy landowners who reigned over the pagi from which they originated. List of nomes. The nomes are listed in separate tables for Upper and Lower Egypt.